Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the first in our series of An Audience With. I'm delighted to have an audience with the Pint-Sized Farmer, officially known as Sally Urwin, farmer's wife, farmer, and author from Matfern in Northumberland. I'm also joined on tonight's webinar my colleagues Emma Hayes, who is one of our agricultural accounting managers based in our South Lakes Kendal office. Another colleague, Jonathan York, one of our agricultural accounting directors, who works out of our Carlisle office, both of who are responsible with myself for looking after farming, and of course myself, Andrew Robinson, head of agriculture for Armstrong Watson, and predominantly based in the Hexham and Northallerton offices. We wanted to do something a little different throughout this webinar and the series we're going to do over the year, and I think we looked at what was happening, and there's a huge amount of very valid and technical webinars going on there, with technical on accounting and tax and whatever else. But we felt that there's a bit of a lockdown fatigue creeping in as we're now into our third national lockdown. So could we do something different, make it a little bit more light-hearted, but still useful to our clients and you all watching this tonight? So that was where the idea for, and we're very grateful for Sally to come in onto our first one to share and provide not only her experiences from farming, writing books, hashtag Pint-Sized Farmer on Twitter, and her career beforehand, and how all of these, there's a wonderfully interesting story there, and how those experiences and things she's done in business can relate to your business or give you tips for your business. So that was the aim. Just before we get into Sally, we're running a competition this evening, and Sally's kindly donated a signed autographed copy of her book, The Diary of a Pint-Sized Farmer, to the winner. And what we'd like all of you to do whilst you're watching is, if you were to write a book about your farm, what would its title be? So if you could type those in the question panel that comes through to us, just the simple title, what your book would be. Try and keep them relatively clean in terms of vulgarity, but if it wants to mention plats and muck on the farm, that's fine. So the most amusing or clever book title will be chosen at the end of the webinar, and the winner gets a signed book. So please get your creative minds thinking. Yeah, and there Sally's kindly showing the book. So we're that'll keep you occupied whilst you're listening. So now I'll just move on into the main purpose of this. And as I say, we're really grateful Sally's here. So Sally, I thought it would, if we could just start by how you sort of how you ended up where you're at, writing. Oh, we've seemed to have lost Sally and we've kept Emma. Like, technical webinars are great fun, aren't they? But she can still. Here we are. Sorry. So Sally, you're not from. You weren't born and bred into farming like some of us are. You came from a different background.
I did. Yeah. Yes.
Ended up on a farm and the book. So describe a bit of the background to that and how you got to where you are now.
Yes. Well, I am from Tynemouth on the coast and no farming experience whatsoever. And what I did was I went to university, and in those days it was sort of like, if you were fairly academic, you got pushed into a corporate career, I felt. So I started work as a marketing manager, and I spent many years at the coalface of marketing. And then in the early 2000s, I found myself working, and it was the most depressing job in the world. I was marketing a group of insolvency practitioners. It was a massive accountancy firm. And that was me. And it was just so depressing. You know, it wasn't really my thing at all. In those days, it was quite high pressure, and I had to stand up and give presentations. And oh God, I hated it. I really did. I was sort of held together with beta blockers and extra strength deodorant, you know, really not great. So yes, and then I decided, you know, I'm really not enjoying this in my late 20s. What I really want to do is I want to leave the corporate life and go and live and work in the countryside. So that was the decision. Of course, you can't just leave your job like that. But I was single at the time, and it was the very early stages of internet dating in the early 2000s, and I joined Dating Direct. And in those days, you could put down what height you wanted your partner. So I put 5'7" because I'm very mini. And you could actually put down what job that you wanted them to do. So I put down farmer and in Northumberland. And 2 guys popped up, and one of them was Steve. Went on a few dates, and in 12 months we were married. So really, Steve was the saviour. He took me away from that sort of dreadful 9-to-5 grind, and I started to learn all about farming.
Excellent.
It was a very steep learning curve.
I'm sure it was, but any change in any career could be described as that. So you were involved in marketing and obviously learned what corporate business was like, the pros and the good bits and bad bits of that. But do you think there's any bits that you've retained from that help you in your current role as a full-time farmer and author? And
yeah, I mean, you know, having the training in presentations and public speaking, and having to go to those, you know, those dreadful network meetings you get, and then having to go and make friends with people and sort of get out of your comfort zone, because I'm actually quite shy. So it's really difficult for me to step out and do it. But a lot of practice, I did that. And marketing helped when we were diversifying. That was good.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And I sort of retained quite a few contacts from those days. But it's 20 years now since I was in an office. Thank God. Thank God.
So your title's Pint-Sized Farmer. Tell us a little bit more for those people watching and listening that don't know Sally Urwin.
Well, the pint-sized thing, I thought it was very clever at the time. I'm very short. I'm only 4'10". I'm sitting down, so I look quite tall. And at the time, after I'd met Steve, we'd diversified into a micro brewing business. So I thought Pint-Sized Farmer was quite a clever way to put it together. And I started tweeting and doing things on Facebook. And now a lot of people call me Pinty, which I answer to online and offline. So it seems to be quite a good strapline, I've decided. Because other people in the farming industry, you've got the Yorkshire Shepherdess, who's a lovely lady, but she's 6 foot. You know, she's very sort of capable. And then you've got me, so I'm a bit different, maybe. You know. So I actually do think I'm shrinking as well, which is a bit alarming as I get older.
Yeah, I think we're all. I used to think I was 6 foot, but I'm not anymore. But so that actually the comment on there about diversification leads us nicely into the next thing, because the farm you and Steve run isn't by modern standards isn't a big farm. It's surrounded by a lot of other estate farms and things, but so it isn't a big farm. So you over the years have diversified into a number of things, including writing books. But what's been the good bits and the bad bits, the pros and cons of those various diversifications?
I mean, I think you've been with us along most of the way, and because we're such a small farm, we're only 150 acres, which isn't big. And as you say, we're surrounded by lots of sort of bigger estate-run farms, lots of tenant farmers, much bigger farms. And we have to diversify because there just isn't the income coming in. So at first, Steve was trying to work part-time, I was working full-time, and it just didn't work because we didn't have time to do the farm work as well. So we decided, or Steve decided, to open up a microbrewery, which he did. It was just a 10-barrel plant, and that was back in 2003. And just before that, of course, foot and mouth had hit. So
Yeah.
farming was on a decline anyway. So we had to do something, because if he hadn't, we would have lost the farm. You know, it would have gone for building. It just wasn't viable. So we did that. And then, of course, you've got to keep going. You've got to get more income streams in to sort of manage the business. So we opened up a wedding venue and a tea room, which was eye-opening. And then after that, we sold the business because it got to the point where we were having to stay up till 2 or 3 in the morning doing weddings and then get up and go and look after the animals and do harvest, and it's just not possible. So we sold that business, which is still on our farm but under different managers. And then we have just opened a glamping site just before lockdown hit. But we've got Dark Sky Glamping, who are running a glamping site. And then the next business that we're thinking of, I might just have to shout to Steve to ask whether I can say it. I think I can say it. We're doing a high welfare pig unit. So that's going to be around about 900 piggies, and that's going to start building. And in a way, it's, people always go, yeah, you must diversify, it's great. But of course, you landed with an enormous mortgage. So you've got to keep going to try and get the income in. And you yourself know, Andrew, that it's, you know, we've not had it massively easy, but you just got to keep going.
Yeah, and I think that's, you know, as accountants, we know, but it's interesting what you say there, and from where I see it, a lot of farms, and most diversification projects require money, as you say.
Yeah.
But yours is a really good example of what you've done over the years to do your very best and continue to run a small family farm, but that is also home. And I think one thing that's often forgotten when accountants and professionals are talking about, you know, you need to make more money and what you're going to do to make it sustainable, is that family businesses are much more emotional, and the ties on them because they're home. And I remember when my own father retired from the farm after foot and mouth because his son had escaped to be an agricultural accountant because he didn't like sheep at the time, just loved cattle. But it's diversification's good, but has to be well thought out, and yours have been, including the new one. So the one diversification you haven't mentioned as such yet is your own diversification, which was to write a book. So what was the starting point? What was the inspiration to that, and how did that pan out?
Well, I think because I'd never done any farming before, and I'd come in, and the lifestyle is so, it can be quite, it's very different, obviously, to a town lifestyle, and parts of it I found absolutely hysterical. I don't know why. And I would write a blog post. I wrote blog posts for about 3 years, and it was mainly for my family and friends. I think I only had about 30 people that would read them, and it was all about the funny things and all about the strange things that were happening. And then I went on Twitter, and I love Twitter. It really suits my way of writing. And one day I got a phone call from this lady who said she was a publisher and would I like to write a book? And I thought, this must be a scam. Nobody just rings you up and says, would you like to write a book? So I ran down to the local bookshop, which is Forum in Corbridge. I spoke to Helen and I said, have you heard of these publishers? You know, have you heard of them before? And she went, oh yes, Profile Books, they're really sort of like a good publisher. For God's sake, email her back, ring her back. So I did, and she came up the next week with a new pair of wellies. She was from London, and I don't think she'd been on a farm before. She was lovely, and she offered me a contract. And that was the way I got in. I didn't have an agent. I didn't know anything about it. And she said, we would like, we'll give you an advance, and we'd like you to write a book in a year in a diary format, and we'll give you a hand with editing. And it just grew on from there. So it was next. Have you read Diary of a Bookseller by Sean Bythell or Bithell? Well, it was obviously next in the series from that. They wanted a diary of a farmer, and I must have fit the bill. So it was a real bolt from the blue.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And how did you, did you enjoy? That's a silly question, but was it enjoyable writing it, and how did you go about it, and did it come easily?
It was interesting because I had to actually go down to London a few times, and I'm not naturally in London. because I don't know where I am. All the buildings are too big. And so I went down and I met the publishing people, and they made me give a presentation, which was quite a difficult thing to do, but I did that.
Yeah.
But the actual writing, I really enjoy it. I always have. And it just, without sounding too cocky, it kind of flows. There's a lot of work in it. You write something, I have terrible imposter syndrome. I look at it and I think, oh my God, that's terrible. But when you go back and you polish it and you write it again, you're quite proud that you've come out and you've written however many words. So no, I did enjoy it, and I do miss it when I'm not doing it. It's just getting the time, to actually do it. Because with 2 young kids, the farm work, and I also work part-time off the farm as a marketing coordinator just to bring a bit of cash in. It's really difficult to sit down, because when I sit down, I fall asleep. So, actually sitting down and making myself write. But I do enjoy it. I'm going to be positive.
Good.
I do, yes.
Yeah, well, I obviously when you first published the book, I read it, and I have to admit, I'm not a book reader. I only read books when I'm on holiday. Otherwise than that, I'm usually doing something because I just like to be busy. But when I got your book, I started reading it, and it was one of those where I just read it in about 2 goes.
And of course, you were in it. You're in it,
I was
which
in it.
helps. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I had to get to the page where I was in it and go, look, I'm in a book. I'm in a book. But it's one of those, and I think the format of it just leads you on. I want to see what she was doing next week or next day and things. So
Yeah. No, it was good. Steve's the same, my husband. I can honestly say he's never actually read the book, which to me, I'm like, Stephen, but he reads on holiday, but he's just too busy. I have read him big chapters of it. Yeah, but he hasn't actually sat down and read the book.
I believe he's listening to this somewhere just to make sure we don't say
He's next
too much.
door. He might burst in a minute.
Steve, it's time you read the book from cover to cover. So we've got a couple. I thought I'd just take. We've got some really good questions coming in from the audience, which I thought I'd just take a couple of now. And I know in a couple of minutes we'll go to Jonathan and Emma. But first question coming in: is there any job Sally can't do, job on the farm Sally can't do on her own?
Oh God, yeah. Well, I'm as I keep saying, I'm only little. I can't reach the pedal on the tractor.
Right.
We've got a class tractor, and they're built for men who are like 5'10" and over. So I have to have a cushion, but I still can't reach the brake. So I just go round and round in circles until Steve rescues me. I can't feed the sheep very well on my own because I go over like a skittle, because they tend to knock me over because I've got a big sheep feed bag, and you have to feed in troughs.
Yeah.
We did have to change the quad bike to one that like without any gears, because I can't reach the gear thing on, what do you call it, the gear thing on my feet.
Yeah, the gear pedal down. Yeah,
the gear pedal, that's it. I can't do that. And I suppose the only other thing is we have Texel sheep, and they're massive. So when you catch one, I have a special catching stick. So it's like a hook thing. So I catch them, but then I'm holding her with one leg, and I haven't got enough. I've got Tyrannosaurus Rex arms. I'm just showing you here. So I can't reach around the back to lamb the sheep. So, but I get around it.
I was about to say, from what I've seen, you're fairly, there's a lot of ingenious methods, and I think from what I've seen in your tweets, because they are excellent to follow, is you're never stuck. You're a fairly determined character. Would that be?
Well, yeah, I mean, you have to be, don't you? And Steve laughs at me because obviously the sheep feed bags are too big. So what I do is I decant them all into these tiny buckets, bucket and spade buckets that you get, the little ones.
Yes, yeah.
So there's about 20 of those. And then I quickly put them in the trough. So I'm running backwards and forwards. But in that way, I don't get knocked over. I just hope nobody can see me when I do it, because it's not very elegant.
Don't be worrying about it. That's the same on every farm. So, and another question, which I have, is looking back on careers and farming life and diversifications to date. What would you do differently if you did it again?
I think we would seriously look at doing something other than a microbrewery, because at the time there was a huge explosion of microbreweries in the area, and there's so many that the competition was really quite strong, and it was difficult to position ourselves to be different enough to compete against everybody. We did fine, but we might have looked at something different. I've always thought self-catering is the way to go, maybe. I don't know. I mean, they've all been learning curves. The wedding venue was a massive learning curve, dealing with brides and mother-in-laws and all that kind of thing. And we got briefly into, we had lots of coach trips, which I had to keep pushing Steve into the office because he's got no customer skills. So if somebody was a bit grumpy with him, I'd have to sort of shove him into the office.
That's because he's a farmer.
Yeah, grumpy farmer. So I wouldn't say I would do anything differently, because I've learned something from each diversification, is what I'll say. Yeah.
And if on the same theme as do differently, what's if you could just sort of summarize, what would be the one most important thing, whatever type of diversification you're doing from your point of view?
You need a good salesperson. You can't do a diversification unless you've got a decent salesperson, because you might have produced the most amazing beer ever, but unless you've got somebody with the skills who can sell it, then you're stuck. I'm not a natural salesperson, Steve's not, so we always had to use somebody with those skills, and they obviously cost quite a lot of money, but it's definitely worth it. So you've got to get your sales. This is what I used to bang on to Steve about. Doesn't matter how good your product is, you've got to be able to get it out to the market. So it also helps having a good sense of humor, because otherwise things can get quite, intense.
Yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice for anyone going to diversification. Now you lead me on to the next question, and those of us that follow you on Twitter and know you, the word intense there does something, because I know you often write about how you're feeling on Twitter and anxiety and stress and all, and something, I think it's something that's becoming more talked about in farming is mental well-being. Obviously, for any other business or any person watching and talking on this, mental well-being, lockdown fatigue, the pressures this extra's putting on. But what's your thoughts, and how does that affect you, and how do you deal with that?
I think it's so good that it's getting more out into the open. I think maybe I did have a few comments from the older generation that it wasn't something they would expect someone to talk about. It's a bit like washing your dirty linen in public. You don't tell people about how difficult you might find things. I think it's so important. I have generalized anxiety disorder, so some days are really hard, just to get out and keep going, because everything can seem, you get this feeling of doom, which is quite difficult to break through. But just saying to other people, oh, I have these issues, so many people have come back to me and said, so do I. What do you do to help? What do you do to? And it's not like a physical thing. You can't say, well, take 3 weeks of antibiotics and you're going to be well. There's all these different ways. You go to your GP. You have to, tablets are brilliant. And then, of course, there's all like the mindfulness and the exercise. And it's hard, because if you feel very low, you don't want to do any of that exercise or mindfulness. But reaching out to other people and just seeing how they deal with it. And also, I think as you get older, sometimes the anxiety can get worse because you've gone through various, difficult situations. I think the main thing I would say is take your tablets, because I'm not a great believer in, all the sort of the chakras and balancing your yogas and all that kind of thing. Just take your tablets, go and see your GP and talk about it, are the main things. No offense to people who do yoga. I'm sure it's really, really good.
Yeah, it's one of those. I share. It's interesting to hear that direct from you, because I know I think we all know it's stressful, pressured times, and a lot of people suffer, and it's about being open and dealing with it in the best manner.
Yeah.
We're getting a good crop of questions in here, so I'll do a couple more, and then I'm going to bring. I know Jonathan and Emma both have a couple of questions. So there's one here, and it's actually a really good question. Sally, really enjoyed your artwork, etc. Can you tell us a bit more about it, please?
Oh God, that's what I do when I'm stressed. So I've got like, oh God, it sounds so, I don't know. Is it mandalas? Mandala is, yeah. So mandalas is like where you do lots and lots of intricate circles, like lots and lots of them. And you gradually build up like this huge artwork, and it's very detailed. And it's almost like mindfulness to do it, and it takes your mind off your anxiety. So occasionally I'll put up on Twitter something that I've done, and you can tell how stressed I've been about how intricate it is. So in the first lockdown, it was all these tiny little black lines, and people seem to appreciate it. I maybe haven't described it properly. I did a recent one with bees and honeys and stuff like that. So I wouldn't say I'm autistic, but I enjoy the repetitive sort of pattern making, which helps my mental health. Doesn't sound
Really
much
good.
fun, but it is. It's
No,
good.
I think you're doing yourself down slightly there when you say you're not artistic, because I couldn't do it. Then I know there's another question, and I wanted to ask you this one. I know from reading the book and your tweets, you love your sort of free time on the farm, which I know is fairly rare, but wandering down the stream you refer to, and the wildlife and the trees, and just sort of losing yourself in that. Obviously, we are all being encouraged to become more sustainable as British agriculture. I firmly believe there's a lot of us doing good things anyways. What's your what are your thoughts on farming environmentally and the new schemes that are coming in? And maybe Steve might have a different view. I appreciate that. But...
Next door, you can probably hear him shouting. The fact we've got 10 acres of woodland, and we've got badgers and lots of wildlife. We have, people say that wildlife is decreasing. I don't think it is on our farm. I see lots of different birds. I'm not a bird watcher, but we've got curlews and barn owls and things that I can recognize. And what I'll do is I'll go down to the wood, walk around the farm, like a nature sprite, Andrew, tripping along and looking at daffodils and things like that. And it's lovely. And I take pictures and I show the followers on Twitter and all the other social media. I think we do a lot. The only thing that Steve gets cross about is the amount of rabbits we get. We get a lot of rabbits. And crows. Yes, that's the other thing. I'm going to see if Stephen, you might burst in and tell me something else.
No, it's interesting, and it is, and I think what probably frustrates a lot of us is that UK agriculture is doing an amazing amount of good stuff already, isn't it?
Yeah, and we have some trees on the farm, and one day I decided I was going to go. I was really bored during lockdown. I was going to go measure all the trees and see how old they are. Well, there's trees there who are 200, 300 years old. We've got a real mixture of oaks and ash and really big, beautiful woodland. There's a real variety. And I can't see how we're being done down all the time, because we've got such an amazing ecosystem on our farm. So just getting that over to people, saying it's not like,
yeah, I agree. It's about community. It's about getting the messages there. It's about getting more people to listen to it. And as you know, I disappear to my best friend farm every weekend to drive tractors and look after my cattle. And the other weekend I was on spreading muck. And I counted one time I was in the field on the bit of ground I'd put the muck on, 15 peewits.
Yeah.
And
Do you get
just
deer? We get lots of deer as well.
deer, and you think, there's all this publicity how the farmland's barren and there's no wildlife, and there I could just thrown a stone over them. So it's probably about we've got a message to communicate. So thank you for that. So I'm going to bring my colleagues in, because I've kept them out of it for long enough, and I know they've both got some questions. So we'll bring Emma and Jonathan back onto the things, Emma's turn over. So Emma, I know you've got a which will be a very popular question with Sally, so fire away.
Tell me about the hashtag Fat Pony, and how did you manage to get a horse on the farm, because that is one of the animals my dad has never ever given into. How did you get it? And tell me some tales.
Well, farmers, in my opinion, in my experience, do not like horses. and Steve is the same. But when I married him, the dowry, I bought like this really elderly Shetland called Gladys. And ever since then, I've sort of swapped them. So when Gladys passed away, bless her, the very next day I got another Shetland pony. So I don't think he really noticed. There was always some kind of decrepit flea-bitten thing in the field. And I'm blown away by the popularity of the fat pony, because she's gorgeous. She's 30 years old. She's completely spherical, 4 little tiny legs, Shetland cross, very smelly, really intelligent. And she's been a bit of a nightmare. There's been lots of situations when Steve is like, oh my God. What she tends to do at the moment is obviously there's not much grass in the fields and she wants to be out on the roadsides eating the grass. So when Steve's moving the sheep in her field, she charges up, goes straight through the middle of them and makes an escape route up the road to next door's farm, because she knows there's silage up there. So there's many, occasions where I have to go out with a head collar. It's embarrassing, actually. Elderly Shetland down the road. Steve does like her. I have seen him patting her, but she's.
Are you sure?
Well, I have. He gives her the occasional sheep nut. She's got so much character. She gets out head collars. She rolls under electric fences. She tends to escape, and we found her in the feed shed, and she's so fat she was wedged in the corridor, but she'd managed to reach a head bar and could chew a little hole in the sheep feed bags and suck out the sheep nuts one at a time. So I had to push her backwards. He was like, oh, push her backwards and out of the sheep feed passage. It's just like a hairy cork, and shove her out. So I think she provides entertainment, although Steve might disagree. She's got a little friend now, same size, called Tinkerbelly. So Tinkerbelly and the fat pony sit outside, looking beautiful.
Do you think that'll have convinced your dad to let you have a pony, Emma?
I don't think so, no. I'll try it.
Yeah, no, she's really. I tell you what she does do, which I do find irritating. I do farm tours, and obviously I try and big her up. I've got this really friendly little pony. She's really cute, and I'll go into the field, and she's lying on her side with her feet out like that, all bloated, and she looks dead. She's got her eyes open, and I know she's doing it because she can hear the kids. She just does not want to be part of my farm tour. And last year she had her own personal crow. This is the absolute truth, that would perch on her belly as she lay there all bloaty and dead. And it was mortifying. I was like, she's not dead, she's just pretending. Yeah.
I'll try it.
Yeah,
keep us posted, Emma. Now, Jonathan's probably isn't about ponies and things, but I know Jonathan has a question, which I think will be relevant to a lot of the people listening as well.
Good evening, everybody. Yes, sorry. Emma's question was much more interesting than mine, because I think we're probably all a bit worn out with it. But Brexit and COVID continue to dominate the news. What impact do you think it's going to have on your business in the next 12, 18 months?
It's been really difficult. Brexit, we voted Remain. Lots of people didn't. Fine. It has been tricky. It's been really uncertain. It's been very difficult to move our business forward because we don't know what's going to happen. Steve will tell you more. I'm hoping he's coming in. COVID, oh God, it was a nightmare because the actual lockdown started over lambing. And normally we get lots of unpaid help. We have relatives come up and, and family. And there was no one. It was just me and Steve. And of course, I've still got 2 kids to look after. I've had my dad, who's lovely, but he's 78 and very deaf. And my mum came up as well. But it was just so hard work without any help at all. And I remember watching people in the first lockdown who were sort of having barbecues and enjoying, if you were furloughed. And it just felt, I don't know, I felt very lonely. And at times it was a bit overwhelming. And now it's just very samey, isn't it? There's no visit. I mean, our farm can be quite busy. We get lots of visitors. We get wedding guests coming up, but there's nobody. And I like meeting people, believe it or not. I like chatting to people. So it can be just a bit quiet and a bit depressing, I think. I really hope this lockdown lifts before lambing.
I
So
was
I
just
don't
about
have to do.
to say, how do you think you'll manage this year if we're still under similar
Oh,
conditions? It's incredibly
well,
hard, isn't it?
yeah, I'm lucky because I work in a care home just part-time. I've had my vaccine. My dad's had his vaccine. So we might class Dad as a essential agricultural worker so he can come up and help us. It's just, we're just going to have to get on with it. I mean, last year was difficult as well because we had a clostridium infection in the flock. So we had a lot of prem births, a lot of abortions, and that was really hard because we were dealing with lockdown as well as this problem in the flock. But you get through it. Kids are great, you know, they're 14 and 10, and they can do stuff now, which helps. I am worried about one thing, because if Steve, for example, got COVID, what would I do? You know, who would help? I know neighbours would help, but they've got their own farms. So Steve and I actually had to sit down and say, right, if you get COVID and you're very poorly, who do I go to? So obviously we've got Andrew there, and we've got like Rabbi that we could talk to, the Royal Agricultural Benevolent Institution, and they would, I think, find us people that would help. But it's just so worrying. And I was asking other farmers, what would you do? And everyone's like, I don't know, because there's not any spare agri workers out there. I don't know. What do you think, Andrew? Do you think are people saying this to you? That
Yeah, I think it's not an easy one to think about, and it's almost to have this contingency plan, isn't it? Because I think, touch wood, maybe not recently, but up until late in the year, agriculture had remained relatively unscathed from COVID, hadn't it? And I think part of that was because in the first lockdown last spring, well, farmers were in lockdown anyways because it was lambing and calving time.
Yeah.
you didn't really know. Yeah.
So nobody was going anywhere. It didn't get into the farming community. But then I think there is it's much more prevalent this time. Whether it's, and I'm no expert, but this new variant, and I think it is a concern. And I was talking to a dairy farmer further down the country that I communicate with, and they'd had a case. One of their farm workers, milkers, had been had got it, had to go and self-isolate, and they were fortunate that they'd split the staff into two teams.
I've heard this. So they'll keep them in bubbles.
Yeah, so they'd almost bubbled the milking teams into one and A and B, and the two never met. Which had allowed them, so they had to sell. I think Team B, for example, had to go and self-isolate, but it allowed it to keep it going. Now, obviously, in many farming situations, like your own, it's husband and wife, or it's father and daughter, father and son working two on the thing, and I think it's a real threat. And I think it's at that point that there's useful, you know, it is caught. Farmers are good at helping each other out, and I think neighbours would just make it happen. But we have to be alert to it, and I think it's not an easy one.
You know, and I think if it happened during lambing, farmers would help. Of course they would, and the local community would come in, and people I know would help. Getting that skilled workers, and of course other farmers have got their own farms to look after, often with much time spare at all. So that I mean, I'm a great worrier, but that worries me. It really does. I wish I could get Steve a vaccine, but he's only 46, so I don't know when that's going to happen. Yeah,
it's just a youngster.
I know.
I'm saying nothing.
So,
no, I'm not either. So one, I'm busy. I was busy noting down some excellent book titles, which we'll have a look at in a minute. But there was one final audience question, which I'm just pulling up on the side of it. Is here we go. What would Sally's suggestion to be to anyone new to farming or wanting to get into farming? And I think that doesn't just refer to somebody in your instance where you marry or via relationship getting into a farm, but anyone that's wanting to get into it.
Do you know what I've always said? Don't be held back by what other people say, because people would look at me. I used to wear high heels and highlighted hair and all the rest of it, and you'd never cope on a farm. Bollocks. Of course I do. You just get on with it. So you just got to do it. You know, if you've got no farming background, we've had quite a few kids from the local community who've come up and said, I don't know anything about farming. Can I have some work experience? Of course you can. You know, come and see whether you enjoy it. Go to agricultural college. Try and get into it that way. Try and get as much experience as you can, but don't be put off by what other people say. You don't have to be a 6-foot bloke with hands like shovels. You can do it if you're differently shaped, or different, you know, just different in any other way. But it's a real joy to me that I can do this. And even though I had no background at all, and if I can do it, anyone else can. You know, I'm not exactly athletic, so yes, definitely go for it.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you for that. Well, there's been some excellent questions, and thank you for being so honest and candid and open. And hopefully throughout there, there's, you know, we've inspired or given folks some ideas of what to do in their own business, or what works and what doesn't. So I must admit, I've been writing these down. There's one or two of them did make me chuckle. So if we can just have a little I've picked what I considered the best out. So here we go, folks. This should give everyone a little entertainment. I think Steve's put one in here, and I must admit this, you maybe need to have a chat about him. First book title, but obviously he's not going to win, is he? But The Road to Hell and Back.
That sounds like... Steve, was that you? It was.
He's in trouble now.
There's a really clever one here. Heard it all, more than meets the sty.
That's very good.
Now,
yeah,
and herd is spelt as in cattle herd.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
sty for new pigs. I like this one. This is our up to my ears in crap.
Yeah, that's quite honest, actually. Yeah.
We've obviously got somebody from somebody put one in, and I think that they obviously have a other career as well. Confessions of a nurse from the ward to the lambing shed.
Oh, do you know, I've met lots of nurses who do lambing, and they're really useful because they can pull things out, and yeah, good one.
Fresh air, sunshine, muck and tears.
Yeah, that would be about right.
And the last one I pulled up, and I'm just busy checking that there's any more that I like, was Play in the Field. So
that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we should really let Sally choose which one she likes. So we've got, well, obviously we can't have Steve's. We've got Heard It All and More Than Meets the Sty, Up to My Ears in Crap, Confessions of a Nurse from Ward to Lambing Shed, Fresh Air, Sunshine, Muck and Tears, or Play in the Field.
I like the Heard one. I think that's clever. Different use of words. Well done. Yeah. Can we give that one?
Thought that one. So we'll congratulations to the person that we've got here. We will be contacting you after this and getting a signed book to you, and very clever. So so thank you for everyone that's partaken. I would like, just before we finish, I would like to promote our next one. So if you're following the series, our next one, the date will be confirmed and sent out via email, but it'll be probably around the 3rd week of February, and the audience will be with Tracy and Ailette Roan from Roan's Dairies. Tracy and her sister and the whole family were on one of the first series of This Farm in Life on BBC Two. They run Clover and Holsteins out on the southwest of Scotland, Dumfries and Galloway. Tracy's obviously is another one of the founder of Dumfries and Galloway Dairy Woman. They've diversified into dairy, bottled milk, milkshakes, and I've had conversations with them before at shows and things. It'll be really entertaining. So watch out for that one coming. That's next month, and I'm really glad. So Sally, or should I say Pint-Sized Farmer, on behalf of myself, Jonathan, Emma, I would just like to thank you for taking part. It's been really interesting. Even me that's known you and Steve for a lot of years now, and worked with you, I've got more hindsight and background. So thank you for that. I hope everyone that's listened has enjoyed it. And watch out, we'll be emailing the next one with Tracy and Islet Rowan in February. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody. Bye.
Good night, everyone.